Stop me if you've heard this one before, but a big man rolls into Houston and has his way with the Houston Rockets defense. First, it was Karl-Anthony Towns with the Minnesota Timberwolves, and now it is Joel Embiid with the Philadelphia 76ers. But the big question moving forward is, why has Stephen Silas decided to suddenly stop staggering Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr.? We're going to break it all down for you right here at Locked On Rockets.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
With the second pick in the 2021 NBA Draft, the Houston Rockets select Jalen Green.
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
I'm going to keep working. I'm going to keep getting better every day. I'm going to keep perfecting my craft. And every time I step on that floor, I'm coming.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian, and also host of Locked On NBA Mondays. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at JT Gatlin, and the show, of course, at Locked On Rockets. As always, we thank you for making Locked On Rockets your first listen each and every day. Joining us now is Will, a.k.a. Bias Houston. You can find him on Twitter at Bias Houston, one of the hosts of the Rockets safe spaces that have been taking the world by storm on Twitter. Will, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm excited to be here and talk Rockets basketball with you.
I'm excited to have you here to talk Rockets basketball. I'm sorry we don't get to talk about a more exciting game. I mean, it's unfortunate that the Rockets have found themselves at the wrong end of a lot of blowouts as of late. The most recent one coming at the hands of the 76ers. Final score 111-91. And we still have a lot to talk about from this game, but stop me if you've heard this one before, Will. Big man comes into Houston. Rockets have nobody to guard him, no bodies to throw at him, and he puts up insane numbers in the first quarter, and then the team is able to just kind of coast the rest of the game. It seems like they just went through this with the Minnesota Timberwolves and Karl-Anthony Towns, and then on the very next day, second night of a back-to-back, Joel Embiid walks in and does what Joel Embiid does best and puts up an insane stat line. It just in the first quarter, he had half of his points scored by the end of the first quarter, went to the free throw line like 9 times. The Rockets did not have an answer for him all game.
Yeah, I mean, talk about one just bad scheduling to have Cat yesterday and then Embiid today, two of the most dominant bigs in the league, to have them on back-to-back nights. That's just tough. I think for this team, we struggle with, one thing that we struggle with a lot is our defense, and particularly our defense on the interior. I'm a pretty big Christian Wood supporter, but even I have to admit that his defense, particularly guarding these dominant bigs at times, is pretty suspect. We tried our best to incorporate Daniel Theis into that starting lineup to kind of slow Embiid down. As you just said, it didn't work, not even remotely. He had an explosion in that first quarter, the first 8 minutes of the game. He got everything he wanted. He wasn't struggling. It was light work for him. It looked easy, and he looked like, in my opinion, he looked like the best big in the game tonight. So, that's something that we're going to have to address moving forward. Maybe trying to get Garuba involved more and see if he can kind of slow guys like this down. I mean, obviously, you're going to be able to ever just stop, a dominant big like Cat or Embiid, but you can try to slow them down and make the night tougher on them. And tonight, yesterday, it wasn't tough at all. They got everything they wanted.
I find it interesting, Will, to find out formally that you're kind of a Christian Wood supporter, because I was kind of, I was straddling the fence there for a little while, not quite completely okay, we need to, they need to move Christian Wood. That needs to be the go-to. I was sitting there kind of defending the idea that he might be able to, stick around and be here long-term for the Rockets rebuild. And I've since kind of moved more so. Wow. It's a good thing I don't talk for a living. I have now moved more towards the side of thinking that the Rockets do need to move him. There's just so many variables that are kind of pushing my thought process that way. But I think tonight, and you already talked about it there briefly, that the Rockets made the move to bring back the lineup that Rockets fans have to hell and back with Christian Wood and Daniel Theis in the starting lineup, the double big lineup. Now, some numbers to throw out here. This isn't just the worst lineup in the NBA, which is a minus 26.5 net rating, but it's the worst lineup of any team ever recorded in the 15 years the NBA has data available, with a minimum of 150 minutes played. So
I did not know that. That is crazy.
The data points are there. The double big lineup is horrendous. And my problem here, though, is as frustrated as everybody was, and the moment I saw the starters, the moment Rockets PR put the starters out, and I'm like, I got to hit send on this tweet, and everybody's going to light up my mentions. I felt for Stephen Silas, like legitimately, because you have a team that is skidding as bad as they have been on defense, that has struggled to contain teams, that has looked lost, discombobulated. They can't get stops in transition. They can't get stops in the half court. And you've got Joel Embiid walking into town after Cat just had his way with you. I get that the numbers support that lineup looks bad, that the double big lineup looks horrendous. But I feel like Stephen Silas is catching a lot of flack when at the end of the day, what are you supposed to do? Are you going to trot Christian Wood out there to play Joel Embiid in one-on-one coverage? The only other argument that I can hear is maybe the Rockets should have gone with a game plan where you just send, double teams every possession at Joel Embiid, and you try and hope to make somebody else beat you. But they did that in the first meeting between these two teams, and granted, in that game, they didn't have Christian Wood or Kevin Porter Jr. playing because of the suspensions, but they opted in the minutes where Daniel Theis wasn't on the floor to throw double teams at Joel Embiid. They were kind of specifically running Jae'Sean Tate, David Nwaba, like side-by-side tandem in that second unit when Theis was off the floor, to really try and disrupt Embiid and have those two guys just kind of flash double teams at him all night. So maybe that's the argument. But I think that where I'm going with this is I think this is more so of an indictment on Christian Wood and his defense, as you kind of alluded to already, than it is about Stephen Silas like being in love with Daniel Theis or being in love with the double big lineup. I don't think that's the case.
And like I said, I'm a pretty big Christian Wood supporter. Just kind of touching brief, I think the Christian Wood trade saga has kind of been like the biggest talking point of this season, this early season, is do you trade him? Do you keep him? And, to start the season, I always wanted to keep him. I thought, he could be, maybe not the starting big in the future because, Şengün's kind of coming in and taking his claim of that spot eventually. But I thought that he could be, a piece moving forward that we could, until Şengün was ready to take the keys from Christian Wood, that he could kind of still be that starting big for us. As of recently though, I still want to keep him. I still think he's, he can bring some to this team. But I've come in these recent days, I've kind of admitted that there is a very valid argument for wanting to trade Christian Wood. And if you're able to make that argument to me, yeah, we can trade him. I mean, I'm gonna miss him when he's gone. I'll wish him the best wherever he is. I'll, probably support whatever team he goes to. But yeah, I understand if he has to get traded, I get that. And then what you were saying about the defense, man. Like I said, he's part of it. Part of it is, I think it's a team thing first and foremost. I think the team needs to be better defensively. It's not just, I don't think you can just kind of scapegoat one person and say, because I believe, excluding tonight, Embiid had a good game, but we didn't get blown out like that. But against Dallas and against Minnesota the other day, I want to say they put up a combined 271 points on us. Like, that's not on one person. You can't just say, oh, let's trade for this guy or trade this guy or draft this guy, and that fixes that problem. That's a team effort thing. So I think, obviously I think Christian Wood most definitely has to be better defensively. And I think a lot of it honestly might just be because he's 6'10", but he's like 230 pounds, 220, something like that. So I think, and he's going up against guys like Embiid who are 7'1", 275, something crazy like that. So, I think that kind of plays a factor into it. And I think it's also like just an effort thing. And then just him knowing, where to be defensively and, that communication with his teammates. But then, like you said, too, there was also possessions tonight where they did, throw, kind of like a double team at Joel Embiid. We saw like there was one possession. I can't remember if it was Christian Wood or Daniel Theis, but one of them were posting. Joel Embiid was trying to post up on them, and they were standing straight up, hands up in the air, and Jae'Sean Tate came over and just stripped Joel Embiid and just went down the court. I want to say he scored off the bench. I can't remember, but like that's an example of what you were saying though. Just making up for the fact that we're not the best interior defense team. We can kind of throw those double teams at them and get plays like that off.
It was definitely something that I wish we would have seen a little bit more of in this game against the 76ers. Coming up, we're going to have some quick hitting thoughts on some of the other guys from this Rockets roster. And then we're going to dive into the big discussion, which is going to be, why are we not seeing Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr.'s minutes staggered? Why have they been mirroring each other's minutes over these last 3-4 games? We're going to get there after a quick message from our friends over at betonline.ag. BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue our march to the playoffs and beyond. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. New year and a new updated desktop and mobile website where you sign up today using promo code LOCKEDON. That's LOCKEDON for a 50% welcome bonus on your very first deposit. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, UFC, even your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, thank you for making Locked On Rockets your first listen each and every day. Now, for your second listen, go check out Locked On Now, nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. Listen to Locked On Now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or watch it on the Locked On NBA YouTube channel. Wherever you watch this podcast or listen to this podcast, you can go check out Locked On Now. Now, Will, let's really quick, we're going to hit on these other guys from this game. Now, you brought up the point about Jae'Sean Tate, and I absolutely loved that one play, right, where he just ripped the ball away from Joel Embiid. And, he had looking down just kind of at the stat line for Jae'Sean Tate, kind of a quiet night for him, 9 points, only the 1 rebound, 1 assist, really kind of an abnormal game for Jae'Sean Tate. He did have a few strong finishes at the rim, but kind of a subpar evening for him. And then the guy that I was really expecting to have a pretty decent game, considering the last time that he faced Joel Embiid, he was still a Piston, and he put up some serious numbers against Embiid, was Christian Wood. And it felt like there for a brief stint, I think it was either into the first quarter or top of the second quarter, where Christian strung together, I think it was he had a 3 and then a bucket right at the rim. And it felt like he was kind of getting it together offensively, but throughout the rest of the game, he just couldn't piece it together. Only 14 points and 6 rebounds in 36 minutes played.
Yeah. I remember that string you're talking about. I think it was in the second quarter, I believe, where he kind of he went on a run where you said he hit a 3. He was getting into the paint. He was, it was a possession. He had a floater that he got fouled on it. Still made that one. But and like I said, is a Christian Wood supporter. It was nice to see him go on that little run, and kind of go match up with Embiid. But the problem is every point he scored, he also gave up probably the same amount of points on the other end. Like I said, I don't want to blame just him. Like I said, it's just it's a team effort in general. But like I said, it's tough to really talk about an impact on the game if for every point you're scoring, you're giving up the same amount of points or more on the other end. And then, like you said, Jae'Sean Tate, he had a quiet night. He's usually, in my opinion, if you would have asked me maybe a month ago who our most consistent player was, I would have either told you it was either Eric Gordon or Jae'Sean Tate. I think Tate has been consistent this entire season. He's someone who I think has taken a big leap in his game. I've always kind of thought Jae'Sean Tate could be a starting caliber player on this team when we do become, championship contenders again. I know that's may not be a popular opinion, but like I said, I believe in Jae'Sean Tate like that. I think he's just one consistent jump shot away from being, that concrete starter. He goes out there and gives you 110%. He'll jump on loose balls. He'll throw his body, try to get the rebound. He'll go out there and guard whoever you ask him to guard. He may not be, Kawhi Leonard with the defense, but he'll go out there and try to guard Russell Westbrook. He'll try to guard LeBron. He'll try to guard Anthony Davis. He'll try to guard those guys, and he'll do as best of a job as you can ask a guy who's 6'4" to do. And so, I think every championship team needs a guy like that. Just, for lack of a better term, just a dog. A guy who, the Patrick Beverly, the PJ Tuckers, the guys who, just don't care. They'll sacrifice their body on a day-to-day, night-to-night basis, and do whatever it takes to win. I think that's Jae'Sean Tate for us. So like I said, I think as long as he can develop that, respectable 3 where defenses just can't leave him wide open, he's going to be, I think he's going to be amazing.
No, I'm right there with you. I've had high praise for Jae'Sean, many a time, and I do think that that consistent jumper is the key to unlocking his game. Because there are times where the defense just completely ignores him or sags off him, and it's mind-boggling for a guy that I love to watch play as much as I love watching Jae'Sean seeing him like with the ball at the top of the, at the 3-point line, and there's a big who's like 10 feet away from him, and he could easily take like the wide open shot, and he's not even looking to shoot sometimes. Like he's just looking for the dribble handoff, and that's it. Like he doesn't even acknowledge the fact that the big is not checking him whatsoever. Those moments can be a little bit frustrating because I'm like, no, like if he had a consistent jumper, then it would pull the defense further out. And so that is, kind of the one net negative to his game, but he brings you so much else across the table, the playmaking, the defense, the ability to score inside at just 6'4". Some of the shots that he makes, down low in the paint in the land of the trees are ridiculous because I'm just like, how is he even getting these shots off? But the other guy, but before we dive into our whole, KPJ, Jalen Green stuff from this game and kind of taking a look at their play in this game, as well as, moving forward, what should happen with their minutes and why are they not being staggered? Daniel Theis actually had a really solid game. Like, and I'm sure Rockets fans don't want to hear that, but he was good. Like he had 12 points, shot 4 of 7 from the floor, 3 of 5 from 3. Unfortunately, Joel Embiid is Joel Embiid, and he's still going to get what he wants defensively, or, even with Theis guarding him. Although Theis had some decent defensive possessions on him. And then unfortunately, it's just on offense, defenses just don't respect his 3-ball. Like even when he had the shot, even though he had the shot falling in this game, shot 60% from behind the arc, defenses are just willing to give him that shot. Like if Daniel Theis is going to shoot 8 for 10 from 3 or something, and that's the reason you lose, they're like, all right, that's the one time he's ever going to do that. And then we'll take our chances, in the next 82 times that we play Daniel Theis, that he's not going to shoot 80% from the 3-point line. And so it's kind of like one of those reputation things at this point where if Theis is on the floor, it just shrinks everything else and makes it that much harder for KPJ, Jalen Green, Josh, DJ, for them to get anything going as far as driving lanes and stuff towards the rim, because you've got Embiid and Drummond and everybody else just camped so far down in the paint that it prevents you from getting anything done. Case in point here, the Rockets only had 28 paint points in this game. They could get nothing going downhill towards the paint against the 76ers because the spacing was just off. Like, again, no spacing, just vibes when it comes to the double big lineup. But let's get into Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr. because they both had, Jalen Green had an all right game, I think. Wouldn't you say? How would you rate Jalen Green's game?
On a scale of 1 to 10, 6.5, 7. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't, nothing that you're gonna write home about either. So, we'll take it for his rookie year and we'll keep it pushing.
And I think if you're looking at his game specifically, I think the number that stands out, unfortunately, for Jalen Green is the 7 turnovers.
Yeah.
And a big chunk of those, like I want to say like 3 or 4 of those, were just because he just didn't have like he was just very, very loose with his handle, right? Where there were a couple times, like Korkmaz picked him at one point early in the game. Yeah. And I was thinking like, okay, if you've got Korkmaz picking your pocket just because you have a loose dribble like that can't fly. So 7 turnovers is really rough. And a big part of that was just because the handle is not being taken care of and he's being a little bit too loose with it. But that's something that can be worked on and groomed over time. Now, on the flip side, with Kevin Porter Jr., I think he did have a bad game.
He had a bad game.
And his game ended with his finishing stat line, 8 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 turnovers, just 2 of 9 from the floor, and then 0 of 5 from 3, missed all 5 of his 3-point shots. And he ended the night with a frustration foul on Charlie Brown Jr. Just Charlie Brown Jr. coming across the court in transition. He's about to get, basically a breakaway bucket for free. And KPJ just walks into him and just shoulder checks him. And I remember thinking, literally as it happened, I went, oh, damn. I was shocked kind of because I immediately knew that's going to be a flagrant 2. You're going to get tossed for that. Didn't make a play for the ball, completely just went straight for Charlie Brown. And it was kind of disappointing to see that be the end of KPJ's night, in this one.
Yeah. I feel the same way. We all know about KPJ's history and, the problems that, resulted in him coming here, resulted in him dropping, from being this high lottery pick to going number 30, going to the Cavs and the Cavs trading him here. We know all about that. So it was disappointing to me, like you said, to see that's the way his night ended. He's a guy who I think a lot of the way Kevin Porter Jr. plays on a night-to-night basis is predicated on his mentality for the day, where his head's at. If he's in comes out and hits the first couple of shots and, gets that rhythm going, he's going to have a good game. You'll see him like celebrating, running up and down the court, hitting a little dance move or whatever. And he's happy. And like, that's when he plays really well. But then there's nights like this where the defense frustrates him. He's not getting what he wants. And then, it shows in his play. I think, just kind of going back to the day where, the incident with him that resulted in him getting suspended, I think that was an example of a time where he was in a rhythm. He was having a great start to the game. And then, Silas called that timeout when he was about to ISO. I forgot who he's ISOing on. He put the ISO on somebody. Silas called the timeout. You can kind of see, it frustrates KPJ, and Jalen kind of puts his hands on his head. They both kind of got dejected. The difference is Jalen, when something doesn't go Jalen's way, he doesn't care. He'll keep shooting. KPJ is a little bit different. He needs that rhythm. He needs that consistency. And so, when that happened, I think that's what took him out the game. But as far as like his game today, I think, the huge issue with Rockets Twitter with him is that, he's not a point guard. Is he a point guard? Is he not a point guard? And, we can talk about that later if that's something on the menu. But I think, as far as his game goes today, the problem really wasn't, if he shot better, he would have had a good game, because he had like 6 rebounds, 5 assists, something like that. Like it's a solid stat line for your point guard, who's still in the position, 5 assists, 6 rebounds. Like that's pretty solid. The problem is he shot, I think he said like 2 for 9. So if he gets to converting that, getting that down to maybe like 4 for 9, 5 for 9, like we look at this game a little bit different. We don't say, you might give the Jalen Green treatment. We might not say it's, it's a good game. We're not gonna say it's a bad game either. And I think a lot of what results in KBJ, his regression and his efficiency this year, a lot of it is just his shot selection. It was a possession tonight. I believe it was right before halftime where he tried to get a 2-for-1 opportunity, and he like took an off balance, and it's like that's just not a good shot. You know what I'm saying? That we know you're talented at scoring, KBJ. We know you can hit those big time step back threes against I forgot, was it Washington? Yeah, against Washington, he can hit those big time step back threes. But like at that point in time, we could have got a better shot than a off balance, half-hearted 3 attempt in that. And he takes a lot of fadeaway mid ranges, and it's just like, I mean, when they fall, they're good and you like it, but tonight when they don't, you look and say, well, maybe if you took less, off balance threes and fadeaway mid ranges, maybe you would go 4 for 9, maybe you would go 5 for 9. So I think that's that's the reason why he struggled today.
Yeah, I mean, and it's in conjunction too with the double big lineup is back. The way that Philadelphia was defending this team, a lot of the same struggles that we saw in the first meetup between these two teams. They just didn't have a resolution going into this one because they still had to, or not had to, but they still opted to play Daniel Theis. And so we saw them struggle again offensively, and then defensively, the woes have just continued where they haven't been able to contain the dominant bigs like Joel Embiid, and then they have struggled to contain teams in transition as well. Thankfully, the 76ers didn't go off in transition, but they did capitalize on the fact that the Rockets turned the ball over a ridiculous amount in this game. They had 21 turnovers to the tune of 29 Philadelphia 76ers points. So the turnovers, again, we already highlighted the 7 from Jalen. KPG had his 4. There were miscellaneous other turnovers from the rest of the team. And that's just kind of what resulted in this loss. But coming up, we're going to dive into the minute staggering debate between Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr. Should they stagger? Should they not stagger? We're going to get there in just one moment. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. We thank you for making Locked On Rockets your first listen each and every day. Now make your second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all of your gambling needs. Make a little bit of money with Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all platforms. Now, Will, where are you on the stance of should KPJ and Jalen Green be getting their minutes staggered? Because they started the season earlier, and they were getting staggered as far as their minutes go. And I guess this is as good a point as any for me to pull up this awesome handy dandy chart that I have. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm pulling up a chart. I'll do my best to describe it as I pull it up. But this is courtesy of playbyplaystats.com. And so it's a breakdown of the minutes distribution for Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green, when they're on and when they're off. And so if you're looking at it on YouTube, the orange is when they're both on the floor. The blue is when it's just Kevin Porter Jr. on the floor. And the green is when it's just Jalen Green on the floor. That is a happy coincidence. I did not actually set that up that way. I didn't pick the color green. No, it worked out that way. But in these last now 4 games, so the chart is only up to date through the Minnesota Timberwolves game, but now it includes the most recent game against the 76ers that we've been breaking down and talking about. Over these last 4 games, they haven't been staggered at all. But then you go back and you look at the couple games that you had Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green in the lineup after Jalen Green made his return in the Indiana Pacers game. You have this one right here, so it's just Jalen. Then you have a game where Jalen misses. Then you come back and you've got Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green, their first game back together against the LA Lakers. And they stagger their lineup a little bit. Like both of them, you have some little gaps where it's, just KPJ, just Jalen, all throughout this game. And then they do the same thing again against the Miami Heat. You have a little bit of staggering between those guys. And then the same thing, you can go all the way back to the beginning of the season. You see lots of staggering. But over these last 4 games, they haven't staggered them at all. And frankly, Will, I can't wrap my head around it, and I really wanted to ask Stephen Silas about it post-game, and I didn't get a chance to after this game against the 76ers, and I promise that I'm going to as soon as I get an opportunity to ask Silas why. But where do you stand? Do you want them to be staggered? Do you think it's okay that they're not being staggered? What are you seeing right now?
Well, I put out a tweet earlier today where I went back and I searched the word stagger on my Twitter account and screenshotted a bunch of tweets from October, November. And I posted, and I was saying, I've been wanting them to stagger KPJ and Jalen's minutes this entire season. I feel like, they're 2 very explosive, promising young talents at the guard position. We should have at least one of them on the floor at all times. I don't think there should ever be a moment in the game where, both Jalen and KPJ are on the bench. I think the offense stagnates, and then we're wasting development time in those minutes. And so, I think a good comparison for where we should want, maybe not a 1-to-1 type deal, but an idea of what we could do about the staggering is how Mike D'Antoni used to stagger Chris Paul and James Harden, and then Russell Westbrook and James Harden, where both of them would start the game halfway through the first quarter. When we had Chris Paul would go to the bench, James Harden would finish the quarter, then the second quarter would start, Chris Paul would come in, James Harden would go to the bench, and then halfway through the second quarter, James Harden would come back and Chris Paul would be back, and they would finish the quarter together. Rinse and repeat in the second half. Like I said, may not be that extreme with Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr., but something to that extent where, you sub one of them out maybe at the 4-3 minute mark, you let the other one finish the quarter, then you bring the other one in to start the second quarter, maybe give them a breather halfway through that, but then, you finish the quarter out with both of them, and you do the same thing in the second half. So like I said, I think we should have been doing that. I don't really know why. I think they're trying to see if, what happens if you play them together all the time. I don't really know why that is, because I like KPJ and I like when the ball's in his hand. I believe in him as a point guard, but there are times when I want to see what Jalen Green can do, as a primary ball and as a primary facilitator. I want to see what that looks like, and I want to see what Kevin Porter can do when he he doesn't have to worry about getting Jalen Green touches. He can just go out there and be him. And so I don't really know. Like I said, if you ever get Silas to answer that question, you're gonna do numbers, because nobody knows at this point.
My 2 observations on this, and just again, this is me kind of spitballing as to maybe why they're doing it, is so first off, you can go with, I think that ultimately maybe it has something to do with Josh Christopher and his increased role in that second unit. So it's possible that they are deciding to not stagger KPJ and Jalen Green because they want Josh Christopher to have the opportunity to kind of have the ball in his hands and kind of be running that second unit with guys, which is kind of what we've seen. He's basically, up until tonight, he's basically taken over the kind of spot minutes for DJ Augustine, and that second unit, he's kind of been in there with, at times, right, like kind of Eric Gordon in the backcourt, and it's kind of been them running the show as the backcourt for the Rockets. But that's kind of the first thought that I had. And then the other thought that I had, as far as not necessarily why they're doing it, but why I'd like to see them go back to staggering them and not mirroring their minutes, is because it really feels to me, Will, that when Jalen and KPJ are on the floor, I think that Jalen is significantly less aggressive, and he defers way too much to KPJ. Like it's basically, I don't want to say it's like the KPJ show when he's out there and when they're both out there, but and again, maybe it's some dynamic like, oh, he's the vet, or he's, the big brother, right? So I'm just going to defer to him. But I do think that that's kind of like, you look around the league at some of the other rookies, right? You look at Cleveland with Evan Mobley, you look at Detroit with Cade Cunningham, even Orlando with Jalen Suggs, And they're all making it a point to like highlight and place an emphasis on their rookie, right? On their top pick. They're like, this is our guy. This is our future franchise, our cornerstone, whatever. And that's been one of the biggest gripes this season is the Rockets really haven't done that with Jalen Green. Like it feels like at times he's not necessarily like iced out of the offense, but just he's not a focal point for what they're doing. He goes, multiple possessions in a row or an entire possession without ever touching the basketball, spotting up in the corner and not being involved. And I think that's kind of a disservice to him at this point where I don't want to completely like, I'm not trying to throw Stephen Silas under the bus and be like, what's happening here? But I do think it has something to do with the fact that they've been trying to kind of grow and develop Kevin Porter Jr. as a point guard at the same time that they're trying to grow and develop Jalen Green in his rookie season. And there's not like a clear hierarchy of who the focal point or who the number one option is in this Rockets offense. Like I went back and I even pulled up their like basketball reference pages and I just sorted by the number of field goal attempts that they've had on the season. If you had to guess right now, what's the most number of shot attempts Jalen Green has had in one game this season?
I think it's no more than 20.
You are on the money. It is exactly 20, and that was in the loss against the Pistons. But that's the only time he's cracked 20. And then past that, it goes, he's got 18. He had that against Boston, 18 shot attempts against Boston, his 30-piece night, his career high. He had 17, a few 16s, 15, 14. And then you look at Kevin Porter Jr. and it's actually very eerily similar how their shot distribution is kind of the same. And that might be kind of the crux of why this is an issue. KPJ's most shot attempts in a single game was 17. And then you kind of go down the line. It's, a lot of 17, some 16s, 15, 14, kind of in that mid-teens area. But I think that's kind of the problem that I'm seeing is I think that there's an issue here where the Rockets went into the season, right, trying to figure out, okay, we need to figure out what we've got with KPJ. Maybe he's the point guard of the future. Maybe he's not, but we got to figure it out. We got to see what he's capable of. And I'm still not off that train yet. I still want to see what KPJ has. But at this point, I think that KPJ and the like experiment with him as the point guard might be infringing upon and kind of inhibiting Jalen Green from his development as the number 2 overall pick and, a potential future star for this Rockets team. Am I off base here? How do you feel about that?
I think there's validity to that point. I think there is a world where Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green both get the necessary shots and reps, at their own individual roles to develop into, our point guard and shooting guard of the future. I think there's definitely a world where that happens. I agree heavily with the point where you said, where it seems like at times, for better or for worse, Jalen Green defers to Kevin Porter Jr. When they're on the court together. He'll go sit in the corner and he'll just kind of look at him. If Kevin kind of motions to come off the screen, he'll come off the screen and kind of catch it. But he kind of lets KPJ dictate what he does in those moments. And, I forgot what game it was. It might have been the game he got 30, but it was, I don't know if it was Silas said it or if KPJ said it, but in the post game, they said one of the reasons Jalen was able to get go off for that 30-point game was because Kevin Porter Jr. said, hey, it's your turn, bro. Like, what I'm saying? I'm going to defer to you today. It's your time to run the show. So I think for them, it's all about finding that balance between, Kevin Porter Jr., and what he needs to do to develop as the point guard, and Jalen Green, what he needs to do to develop as your number 2 overall pick, your franchise piece. And I think that there's a world where that happens. I think it starts with, staggering him. I think it starts with letting KPJ run the show when Jalen's on the bench, and then when KPJ goes to the bench, let Jalen run the show. And then, they can come out and get their own shots. They can, play to their strengths, run the offense the way they want to run it, and then, come back in, at the end of the half, and then kind of just unite those forces and try to, finish out strong. I want to touch on what you said about Josh Christopher. I agree with that too. I think that the franchise is trying to kind of give him that DJ Augustine role, that kind of backup ball handler role. I don't know if you feel this way, but I see a lot of, not necessarily in play style, but as far as roles go, I see a lot of Eric Gordon in Josh Christopher, whereas, like I said, where Chris Paul and James Harden is KPJ and Jalen Green, I could see J Gut being the Eric Gordon to that duo tandem, where he comes off the bench. Because, back when D'Antoni was here, the way it worked is like I said, Chris Paul would go to the bench and Eric Gordon would sub in for him, and then James Harden would sub out for Chris Paul, and then it would be the Chris Paul Eric Gordon show. And I could see that being with the Rockets. They do the thing where it's Kevin Porter Jr. then Jacob, and then Josh Christopher, Jalen Green and Jacob. I could see that working out, and then you still kind of get the best of both worlds where you kind of give Jacob, those on ball minutes, those reps where he can kind of control the tempo of the game, but then you don't have theoretically your best players on the bench at the same time. So that's how I feel about that.
I absolutely, I'm right there with you. I think that a lot of people forget about how explosive young EG was earlier in his career. And I think you see a lot of that same explosiveness and just raw athleticism with Jacob. He had the 2 dunks against the Timberwolves that were insane. The one where he hammered it. It wasn't quite like a poster. It was kind of a poster, right? Yeah. Where he drove the ball in and yeah. So, I mean, he's got the raw athleticism, and he's put in a lot of work on his shot. And I think that's the biggest thing for me is when you're there, or when I'm there early at Toyota Center, just kind of, milling about, whatever, hanging out, waiting for, Silas's pregame presser, watching them do their warmups. Josh Christopher has put in so much work into his jump shot, and credit to Coach Barbara Turner as well, who works tirelessly with him, one of the assistant coaches for the Rockets. She's put in a lot of work with him, and he has done an incredible job, getting his jumper to a really consistent place. And he said that the other day, that's, one of the areas of growth that he felt he's made a big push in from the start of the season to now, is really working on that jump shot. But I think for me, Will, one of the kind of disappointing things is since KPJ, and this will kind of be our final point that I want to throw in here, is just since KPJ has come back from, being out that second time, the extended outage, I feel he was kind of getting better and getting away from, it felt early season, right? He would do a really bad job of picking up his dribble way too early and having no outlet for it, just kind of dribbling the air out of the ball, trying to make a move. And then he thinks he has the guy, so then he picks up the ball, and then there's literally no outlet. Nobody's cutting, nobody's moving, nobody's open. He didn't actually break down the defender, and he's just in that 15 to 18 foot range with nothing happening, right? And it felt he kind of got away from that, especially in that stretch right when they started the win streak, the 7-game streak. Things looked pretty solid for KPJ in the few games that he played in there. And it felt he was finally getting, an understanding of his role. He wasn't picking up his dribble a lot. He was keeping it alive. He was finding the right shooters, all this stuff. It feels he's kind of regressed. And there was one possession in this game where it was just him and Daniel Theis for the entire possession, and it was a pick and roll screen, then a rescreen, then another, and I don't even remember how the possession ended. It didn't end with a bucket. That's that much I know. It might have been a step back 3 for KPJ. It might have been a shot for Theis. I honestly can't remember, because my brain was just kind of glossing over, thinking these 2 guys are icing out the other 3 guys on the court, and it's painful to watch. And so I feel he's regressed a little bit as far as really actively looking to get others involved, which is kind of disappointing to see.
Yeah, I think I remember that stretch you're talking about. I think it was the first 3 games. I think he played in the first 3 before he re-injured himself on that 7-game win streak, and he looked amazing in those first 3 games. That's the version of Kevin Porter Jr. The start of what I want to see him become. That's what I when people say he's not a point guard, I say, well, look at those games. Those are games where he played the point guard position. He's not he's never going to be Chris Paul or Ricky Rubio, but he plays his version of the point guard position, and he killed it. He did a great job at it. And I think one of the reasons that allowed him to be successful in those moments was him and Christian Wood had a really good pick and roll game going on at that point in time. They were, it was so many possessions where at the start of the game they would just run a pick and roll. Christian would slip, lob, and it's a dunk, and they're going back the other way. And they used to connect on that all the time. I don't remember the last time we've seen a Christian Wood Kevin Porter Jr. connection on the alley-oop, and that right there was a huge thing. That's one of the reasons why I want to keep Christian Woods, because I saw how important that connection was for Kevin Porter Jr.'s development as a point guard. And so I haven't seen that, since he's came back from the injury the second time. I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's because, they don't like that play no more. Or if, Christian Wood doesn't like setting screens, or KD doesn't want, screens from Wood. And I don't know why, but that was a really good way for Kevin Porter Jr. to rack up, 3 to 4 assists a night, was just running the pick and roll with Christian Wood, finding him, the bounce passes or the lobs. And then, even if Christian Wood is such a dominant offensive big, but so a lot of times Kevin Porter Jr. would get those open shots, and he could, capitalize off of that. I haven't seen, a lot of that lately from Kevin Porter Jr. So I think that's one of the reasons why he's kind of regressed, is that he's not really playing to the string, which is string, like I said, I think was getting that pick and roll with Christian Wood. And I think he's, like I said, I think he's getting into his head too much. I think he's trying to prove that he is, because Jalen Green's been looking really, really good lately. He's been, having that stretch, that we thought we would see from him when we drafted him. I don't know the exact number he's averaging right now, but it's looking really good for him. And, Kevin Porter Jr. looks at Jalen Green as someone who's like his little brother. And right now his little brother is playing way better than him. And so I think Kevin Porter Jr. is trying to prove, hey, I'm still, not trying to take away from Jalen Green, not trying to, compete with him, but just saying like, hey, like we're both good. Like we're both the future of this team. We're both the franchise pieces. And, he can go off, I can go off too. And I think he's trying to force. That's why you see him take these weird shots. You're like, you probably could have got a better shot if you just, didn't fade away. Just take a regular shot. So I think that's, he's in his head too much right now. I think he had the quote, I forgot what game was after, where he said, like, he started the season trying to be a traditional point guard. That's not him. He wants to play scoop ball. I haven't seen, the scoop ball from him lately. He's not really been doing that. And so, like I said, it's disappointing, like you said. But I believe in him. I believe that he can turn it around. I believe that he can still become that point guard of the future. I could see, in the future, he could, average somewhere around 23, 24 points and 7, 8 assists on a night-to-night basis. Like I could see that from him. And so I really do hope that he turns it around, he figures it out. I know he's not the most popular person on Rockets Twitter right now, him and Christian Wood, but I still believe in him. I still believe that he can turn it around and we can get right back on track.
The only person popular on Rockets Twitter right now is Usman Garuba, and that's because he's not playing. The moment he starts playing, Rockets Twitter is going to find a way to bash him. So that's just how it goes, right?
Yeah, that's what I said earlier. I was like, the fan base isn't going to be satisfied until we turn on everybody on the team. We're going to turn on everybody at a point in time.
It's disappointing. We need to expect better from Rockets fans. I need y'all to be better. Come on. We collectively, we can be better than this. But Will, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show, man. Yeah. Let everybody know where they can track you down at.
Yeah, you can follow me at Biased Houston on Twitter. Like he said, I'm one of the hosts for the spaces. We had one yesterday where we kind of discussed the game. We had a really, really long and animated conversation about Ben Simmons to the Rockets. So, catch us there on the spaces. And yeah, man, that's where you can find me.
Appreciate it, Will. Thanks for stopping by, man.
Thank you.
That's going to do it for today's episode. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple, Spotify, Google, the brand new Odyssey app, free and available on all platforms. Also, check us out on YouTube. Search Locked On Rockets on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. As always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.